What began as a routine oversight hearing quickly turned into one of the most detailed examinations yet of how the Biden administration handled the Afghan refugee evacuation, and the implications are still reverberating today.
Mr. Adelman, if I could just start with you. You are the Deputy Inspector General for the agency charged with overseeing the Afghan parolee program. Is that correct?
That's correct.
In 2022, your office found that President Biden's DHS allowed some Afghans into the country before they were fully vetted, including, if I remember correctly, one who had been liberated from prison by the Taliban. Do I have that correct?
That's correct.
I think we're going to see this exhibit maybe over the side of my shoulder here. I just want to read directly from your report. CBP allowed some evacuees to enter into the United States who were not fully vetted. CBP paroled one evacuee into the United States who had been liberated from prison by the Taliban. CBP paroled another evacuee who posed national security concerns. Now, early reports by the inspectors general at DOD and the FBI found that over 50 known or suspected terrorists had entered the United States as a result of the Biden administration's screening or lack thereof. And last month, the director of national intelligence said that 2,000 Afghans in America may have ties to terrorism. That is a very, very big number. So I just want to talk a little bit about how this happened and see if I can get your help in doing that. Let me just start with testimony that this committee, the full committee, the Judiciary Committee, previously received. In 2021, then DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas testified that the administration had a rigorous vetting process in place. I think we've got a quote of his here. We have taken steps, I'm quoting him now, to make sure that the vetting program is indeed rigorous. Now, he said, this may have been in response to a question from me, he said that indeed the vetting did deviate from normal refugee screening. That was an understatement. But he went on to say, we have taken steps to make sure the program is indeed rigorous. So you investigated the vetting process. Did you find that the Biden administration's DHS had a formal vetting process in place that they followed carefully?
Mr. Chairman, before you answer, question for the chairman. Are we intentionally bypassing opening statements by the witnesses and going straight to questions?
No, we'll come back to opening statements after Senator Hawley's through.
The department did not have a formal process at the start of the OAW.
Okay, can you just say that one more time?
The department at least could not provide us with a formal screening and vetting process at the start of the OAW process.
The department did not have a formal screening and vetting process in place. The most that the Biden administration did, according to your investigation, was to run Afghans' biometric and biographical information, I think is what you found, like their names and dates of birth and other biographical information they may have supplied. Is that correct? Or is that broadly correct?
That's correct until December of 2021 when they began requiring in-person interviews.
So until that time, for the first several months, they were relying on biographical information supplied by the Afghans as well as some biometrics. Now, your office found that that approach was severely flawed, partly because many Afghans did not know their birth dates. Is that correct? Explain this.
That's correct. There was missing information from the OAW population, including first, last names, and date of birth. There was about 11 to 12,000 that did not know their date of birth.
How many, sorry?
Between 11 and 12,000.
11 and 12,000 who did not, which is a cultural thing, I think, but correct. Obviously presents an issue for us when doing vetting. So 11 or 12,000 who were admitted for whom we didn't even have their date of birth. That's pretty extraordinary. Let me ask you this. Did the Biden administration require Afghans to show identification at ports of entry?
The department requested identification, but not all Afghans had formal identification, such as a passport. We found over 30,000 that did not have formal identification.
Can you just say that number one more time? How many who didn't have identification?
I believe the number's actually 36,000.
36,000 who could not show identification at a port of entry. Here's a quote from the report. CBP's concepts of operations allowed its officers to admit or parole evacuees into the country without presenting proper identification documents. 36,000 of them. That's astounding. And then my understanding is to do the bare bones background checks that were actually performed, DHS, the Biden DHS, sent a list of Afghans to the Department of Defense and the FBI. That process would normally take months. Would it surprise you to hear that the DOJ's Inspector General found that the list of evacuees was submitted to the FBI via email and the FBI was given 2 hours to respond?
I can't confirm that. I can just say that there's very limited time to conduct the screening and vetting of those evacuees.
Yeah, here's the quote. It's over my shoulder, I think. DOD and CBP created lists of Afghan refugees which were submitted to the FBI via email with only 2 hours to respond. Let me just ask you finally, I know my time is about expired, just when it comes to interviews, normally refugees, SIV applicants are required to attend an in-person interview. Mr. Adelman, did DHS systematically interview evacuees before they were admitted? Was all the evacuees interviewed?
No.
Did they systematically conduct mental health screenings?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, all of the above should have been done. And the fact that tens of thousands were admitted without so much as an ID, without a birth date, I think it's really no surprise why we are where we are. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If you want more in-depth reporting that breaks down moments like this and explains what they actually mean, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. Senator Josh Hawley opened his questioning by focusing on a central issue: whether the federal government truly had a vetting system in place when tens of thousands of Afghan evacuees were paroled into the United States following the Taliban takeover. Speaking directly to the Deputy Inspector General overseeing the program, Hawley wasn't relying on speculation or political rhetoric. He was reading directly from official government audits, many of which most Americans have never seen. What Hawley then did was connect those findings to broader intelligence warnings. Inspectors General from the Department of Defense and the FBI previously reported that more than 50 known or suspected terrorists had entered the U.S. as a result of the screening failures. More recently, the Director of National Intelligence stated that roughly 2,000 Afghans currently in the United States may have ties to terrorism. That figure alone reframes the debate because it shifts the issue from a hypothetical risk to an ongoing national security concern. The key moment in the hearing came when Hawley asked a simple but critical question. Did DHS have a formal vetting process in place at the start of Operation Allies Welcome? The Inspector General's answer was direct and damaging. DHS could not provide evidence of a formal screening and vetting process at the beginning of the operation. In other words, despite public assurances at the time, there was no clearly defined system guiding how evacuees were being screened as they entered the country. If you want continued coverage that cuts through official talking points, make sure you subscribe. Instead of a structured vetting process, the department relied primarily on biographical information and limited biometrics. That included names and dates of birth supplied by the evacuees themselves. The problem, as the Inspector General explained, was that thousands of evacuees did not know or could not provide their date of birth, something that is culturally common in Afghanistan but presents serious challenges for identity verification. Between 11,000 and 12,000 individuals were admitted without a confirmed birth date, a detail that makes background checks significantly harder to perform. Identification was another major gap. DHS requested identification, but it was not required. As a result, approximately 36,000 evacuees entered the United States without presenting formal identification, such as a passport. Customs and Border Protection policies allowed officers to admit evacuees even when proper documents were missing. That is not a minor administrative oversight. It fundamentally undermines how border security and vetting are supposed to work. Subscribe now if you want continued reporting that explains these policy consequences in plain terms. The hearing also revealed how compressed and informal the background check process became. Normally, coordination between DHS, the Department of Defense, and the FBI can take months. In this case, lists of evacuees were reportedly sent to the FBI by email, with only 2 hours allotted for review. While the Inspector General could not personally confirm the email detail, he acknowledged that screening time was extremely limited. That means decisions with long-term security implications were being made under intense time pressure with incomplete information. Finally, Hawley addressed what did not happen at all. There was no systematic requirement that evacuees undergo in-person interviews before admission, a standard step for refugee and special immigrant visa applicants. There were also no known mental health screenings conducted at scale. These are safeguards designed not to punish refugees, but to protect both them and the communities where they are resettled. What this exchange ultimately shows is not just a political disagreement, but a documented breakdown between public assurances and internal reality. Officials testified that vetting was rigorous, yet inspectors general later found that basic procedures were missing or inconsistently applied. That gap is what lawmakers are now grappling with, and it is why this issue continues to surface in congressional hearings years later.